I'm Joyce Woodworth. Welcome to the Spirit of Winona. One thing that Winona is truly blessed with are many grand Victorian homes. This one, for instance, which is near Wyndham Park, is an exceptionally grand example. This Queen Anne Victorian home was designed by architect Charles Mayberry in 1886. 2 years later, Charles and his son Jefferson designed the Winona Courthouse. Many similarities in the two buildings exist, not only on the inside but the outside of the house as well. The overall appearance of both is extremely stately. Multiple gables and irregular shapes are a beautiful and interesting part of the design. Arched windows and arched highlights add pleasing touches. Notice the arched window at the basement level. The detail on the outside of the house is incredible and could only be duplicated today at incredible cost. The dragon scale shingles, for instance, consist of 7 different shapes, all laid in interesting patterns and embellished with wood-carved ornamentation. The Victorian porch is accented with cross-connected spindles and arched passageways between the curved posts. The corner of the porch is highlighted with a sunburst arch. The eaves are sectioned by brackets. Circles and rectangulars and squares are included for added detail. Curved molding is added beneath the windows and provides us with a real gingerbread look. The current residents, Don and Linda Olson, happen to be antique buffs and consequently a perfect match for this elegant, stately house. At the holiday season, their antique decorations give us a glimpse of what Christmas looked like when these houses were built. Today we get to visit with Linda and take a step back into the Victorian era. I'm currently sitting with Linda Olson in this grand Victorian home. Hi Linda, and welcome to the Spirit of Winona.
Thank you.
Your house is so beautiful at Christmas time.
Thank you.
You got so many great little touches. But first, I'd really like to find out a history about this house. Can you give us some ideas about when the house was built and who built it and some of the unique features about it from way back?
Okay, well, I can give you some history. This house isn't like a lot of the houses in Winona that have families that lived in them forever and ever. It was built in 1886 by a P. Hollenbeck, who apparently did not live in the house, and if he did, for a very short time, and then sold it to an Emmett and Mary Dyer. And the interesting fact there is that she was quite a bit younger than he, and he was involved with all of the industry in Winona, and grain and banks and a little bit of everything. And she was a mother of 5 children and decided to run for the school board. It wasn't called the school board at that time, but she was the first female that had ever done that, and her competition was a local physician who was quite well known, and the word is that she won by a landslide.
Wow.
So it's pretty interesting that a progressive woman was living in this house back in the or real early 1900s.
And I can imagine when the woman that was on the school board lived here, the house probably looked a lot like it does right now.
Well, I hope so. I've done a lot of research on Victorian homes and tried to do things appropriately. I'm kind of a purist, and colors and those kinds of things. When we bought the house, it was in pretty sad disrepair. But the beautiful woodwork was dried out but not painted, so we knew the house could be salvaged and put back together. And we've been doing that ever since.
Oh, and I noticed it looks, when you walk in, it looks like it's just absolutely perfect, like it was just built yesterday. You've done a beautiful job. Thank
you. It's constant. As you well know, living in an old home, it's constant upkeep, and it's a labor of love. If you didn't love doing it, you just couldn't do it. It would get the best of you for sure.
Linda's warmth and hospitality is apparent as soon as you walk through the front door. The Santa carpet lights your way and takes your glance to the hat rack all decorated and standing in the corner, providing a spot for Linda's collection of ice skates and old hats. You take a step into the warmth of the parlor, and your eyes immediately take you to the fireplace.
There are 3 fireplaces in the home, one in this room and one in the parlor, we call it the piano room, and then one in the master bedroom suite. And the story again is that Charles Mayberry, the architect of the courthouse, and there's a lot of the green tile in the courthouse. So there is the similarity, and he had a lot to do with the building of them. And we use all 3 fireplaces and love them. Not very energy efficient, but we love them. So we use all the fireplaces.
Good. And I noticed the one in your piano room has a wonderful set of fireplace furniture. Does that have some significance? It's so different.
Well, the fireplace furniture in that room is from a great aunt of mine who never had children, and she lived in a huge home. This house could fit in their carriage house. It's very hard to find the complete set. The andirons and then the grate around it. And it's a beautiful set.
I don't even know if they make total sets like that anymore.
I don't think they do. I don't think, particularly the grate around it, I don't think that's an issue anymore.
The fireplace with the beautiful brass andirons is the center focal point of the parlor. Copper-colored tiles surround the firebox, and beautifully carved cherry wood surrounds the tile. Linda has selected simple grapevine and greenery with lights for decoration. A wooden Christmas clock, a lantern, and a wooden Santa sit upon the mantel under a huge grapevine wreath. Behind the piano is a large balsam fir tree with Victorian decorations.
That one has become our Victorian tree, and several antique ornaments on it, as well as, I can't quite believe I did this, but in the late 60s and early 70s, did the beads and sequins on many of those ornaments, and put them away for many years. They've not been taken out, and I think just because they had so much work put into them, I couldn't quite get rid of them, and now all of a sudden they're kind of popular again, and fit into this house anyway.
The Victorian tree is surrounded by a bay of windows and looks over a grand piano. Linda tells us about the lovely manger and Hummel nativity that sits upon the piano, given to her by her husband, Don.
It's a Hummel nativity set, and he gave that to me before we were married, and we've been married for almost 30 years, so it's getting quite old in itself. And his younger brother made the creche when he was 7 years old, and of course now he's a dad himself, so the entire set has lots of meaning. That's a real treasure. We take very good care of that.
The tree in the family room is also another giant balsam and contains the family ornaments. Homemade ornaments put together through the years by family and friends and gathered from their various travels. This room also displays several of Linda's handmade Christmas quilts and part of her extensive collection of Santas. She tells us about some of them.
Several Leo Smiths, and I like to call them Leo and Marilyn Smith because I like to give her credit too. She works very hard on them, so I love them. They all speak to me, each and every single one of them. And they're kind of all throughout the house, and all different seasons and different times of the year. And they all have special meaning to Leo and to everybody else, I think.
Well, Leo does a great job, and I know the painting on them is so exquisite, and I understand that's the part that
Marilyn does that, right.
Linda's house reminds me of the game Find Santa. Wherever you go, whatever room you're in, you're bound to find one of Linda's Santas. I can't help but think of what a fun house this is for a child, searching for the number of Santa Clauses. I noticed many lovely Christmas pictures in your house. Do you change the pictures at the Christmas time?
Yes, I change the pictures actually almost every season, and kind of hard to keep them in a room when you don't have a place for them, but that's something, again, a very good friend of mine gave me the one above the fireplace here, and that kind of started it, and that's, again, something that lots of people have given to me, and also we have several friends that are artists, and that's become kind of a fun thing, too, to collect their pieces. And then we have some of Don's dads who has passed away. He's an amateur artist, was an amateur artist, and we have several of his pieces that are winter and kind of indicative of the Christmas season. So that's real fun to put them up and have them out at different times of the year.
Going from the parlor past the grand staircase with its carved oak newel post with inlaid bird's eye maple, we enter the dining room, which takes us back to when Mrs. Dyer, the school board Victorian woman, served her Christmas breakfast. Linda tells us about several items that Mrs. Dyer may have used.
Well, there is a round convex mirror that's on the wall, and it's called a maid's mirror. And if that was hanging on the wall and the maid saw that somebody at the table needed something, she wouldn't have to enter the room. She could stand in the pantry and look at the mirror and see the full length of the table.
We have another real interesting piece in your dining room, the small chair. Can you tell us about that small chair?
Okay. There's a set of small chairs that are called slipper chairs. And they were Victorian era for the women to not have to bend over so far to do their shoes. And many of the shoes had lots of buttons on them, while the women also had hoop skirts and crinolines on, so they couldn't bend over quite as, and obviously tied in very much. So the slipper chairs are quite low. They're kind of fun too.
You have another really interesting collection in what's called a secretary in your dining room. Mm-hmm. It's a Hummel collection.
Right.
Tell me about your Hummel collection.
Well, we started collecting Hummels on our honeymoon. We went to Bermuda and wanted to bring home some type of souvenir, but didn't want to bring home garbage. So we bought 2 Hummels at the time for $9. And today they've become quite expensive. And again, they are darling little people that talk to me, and they all kind of have a little story too. There's a skier and a little boy traveling, and so they all kind of have little stories as well. And they're just cute. The woman that originated them, this Bertha Hummel, just had a real eye for what to find in these children's faces.
In the center of the dining room hangs a graceful chandelier. The high windows with beautiful carved oak framing bring in the look of the winter snow. The chandelier hangs over the lovely Victorian Christmas setting, and the wassail bowl sits cozily on a corner table with gorgeous paneled wainscoting in the background. In the opposite corner of the dining room sits a lovely china hutch.
My father found that and redid it and finished it, and there's some glass pieces were broken. There's some stained glass in the chest. It's quite large, and he gave it to my daughter instead of me because so she obviously can't have it right now, and I have it now wondering what will happen when the day comes that she wants it back, because it is full of everything under the sun. So it's a beautiful piece, and he worked very hard at restoring it.
Linda has decorated the radiator that sits under the tall windows with a layer of antique lace, some angel hair, and some darling antique choir boys and girls. In the middle of the window hangs antique wreaths that look very familiar to my childhood. Passing from the dining room into the kitchen, we take a tiny walk through the pantry. In here, Linda has a snowman collection and an antique wall telephone that still is in working order. We come to Linda's kitchen next and see an array of wonderful, interesting antiques that are not only displayed well, but incorporated into daily use. My eyes pull me to the hanging baskets because amongst them I see something unusual: ice skates. One pair happens to be the Hans Brinkner skates from the Dutch story Silver Skates. These are just a part of another one of Linda's interesting collections.
Tell us about one of your antique collections, like your tins that I noticed in the kitchen.
Well, I have several Christmas tins in the kitchen, and some are very old, and obviously some are new, but that's a collection that my mom actually kind of started me on years ago when we baked Christmas cookies, and I think everybody in Winona knows that I don't cook, so I would bake with my mom and grandma and then always get to take home all the goods because I would never make them at home. So that's kind of how it started, was my mom giving me some of her old tins, and now when I see tins that I really like, they again are, they all have wonderful Santas or different scenes that are reminiscent of something about Christmas.
You have another interesting collection I noticed in the kitchen. It's a Scandinavian Santa Claus. Do you know anything about him?
Well, I have several Scandinavian things in the kitchen, and that's kind of just a part of our heritage, that we're kind of all reclaiming some of our heritage. And so there's a little Santa Claus, and it's a little mascot, and it's a niece, I believe is how you say it. And that's something that I've kind of gotten into a little bit more over the years. I wasn't into that at all before, and I think everybody is kind of a little bit more aware of their own heritage and where they came from. So it's been kind of fun to reinforce that with our children too.
It is obvious that Linda has found the perfect home for her collections, her treasures, and her philosophy. The inside as well as the outside speaks to her affinity for the house the Mayberrys designed so long ago. Winona can look on in appreciation as they pass this Winona treasure.
You have so many interesting collections in your house.
really interesting. And all your collections are so Victorian. It's like you were made to have this house. You're a perfect match for this house.
Well, thank you. Oftentimes I wonder if I really was a Victorian woman. I tend sometimes to like the country look and the down-home look as well, but I do love the home and have worked, both of us have worked very hard to make it be a homey home. That was one of the big things that we wanted when we bought the house, to make it be a home for our children, and we've had several foster children and foreign exchange students, so it's always been full of children, except now we're empty nesting, which is not good.
Well, we all have to face
exactly,
that.
Right.
But you really do have a perfect Christmas Victorian home, and I'm sure someday you'll have grandchildren that will want to come back to this place.
Right. Can't wait for those days.
Okay, and I want to thank you so much for being on the Spirit of Winona.
You're very welcome, Joyce. Thank you for coming.
This has been Joyce Woodworth on the Spirit of Winona. Please join us again. Until next time, enjoy the Spirit of Winona.